So in Illustrator, this is the sailboat that ultimately you're going to create. When you download the project file, it's going to give you this JPEG, this regular image that we're going to be tracing off to use. For this demo, I'm going to follow closely what's in the book, just to show you the steps that the book is going to be taking and some of the more confusing things about the different tools that we'll use. In mine, notice I'm drawing on layer 3, but the setup is similar to what we've done for the previous project. You got a template layer and you're drawing on top of it. That's kind of the way it works out. In our toolbox, the first tool that we're going to be using is our pen tool. And you can find it, it looks like a regular old style writing pen. There are some different flavors to this pen tool, but what we're going to be using is just the regular old pen tool to work with. Also pay attention to what your fill color and your stroke color is. I'm going to set my fill color to none. I'm going to set my stroke color to red just so you can see what I'm working with and say okay. I showed y'all this before. The primary function of the pen tool is to tell Illustrator exactly where you want to place your anchor points. By clicking once and then moving around, you can see it will follow and it'll actually start drawing off straight shapes. Whenever I go back to my beginning point, you can see it kind of snap to it. And you see the little circle that's next to my icon? That means it's going to close off this point, and now it's one solid object. I can use my selection tools to move it around, rotate it. I can use my direct selection tool to readjust any of these anchor points. All of that's what we did for the last project. If I wanted to make a curved line, this is where the pen tool starts to get a little bit tricky. I'll go down here to a blank area and zoom in. To make curved lines with your pen tool, I always start off with a single point, then you click and drag, and you get your Bezier handles. Those are what those little handles are, and it controls the curvature of this line. As long as I'm holding down my mouse, I can control how it looks. Notice that you get two Bezier handles. This handle controls this curve, and this handle will control the curve of my next line. Also notice that I get a little green line that's following along my line. This is called the rubber band kind of, I think it's called rubber banding. But it gives you a preview of what your line will look like based on this curve. So if I click again, it follows the rest of that line. Now notice, what do I not have on this one? Is it curved or straight? It's straight. I didn't click and drag, so I still got just a straight line. It's only when you click and drag do you get a Bezier curve. So if I wanted to curve my next line, I click and drag, click and drag. If I just click once, it'll complete the curve, but the next time I click, it'll be a straight line from there. But if I click and drag, I get my curved lines. The fun part is trying to figure out where that curve is going to go. And sometimes you have to go back and clean it up. Let's finish this one off. So there it is, finished. Here's where some more advanced things come in. Let's say I click once and I click and drag. If I didn't want it to be right there, I'm still holding down my mouse, I'm going to hold down my space bar. With the space bar held down, I can move where that point is before I commit to it. So if I didn't like it there, I can move it up here, let go of my space bar, then let go of my mouse, and it's right here. Click and drag, space bar, move it around, let go of my space bar. Now I'm only moving my handles, and I've placed it right there. So I don't have to commit to that one particular point. If you didn't know, you can also do this for your shapes tool. A lot of people will draw off like a circle, and they, oops, I don't want it to be right here. Hold down your space bar, and you can move that circle around before committing it to one final part. So the space bar comes in handy a lot. The other one, let's go back to our pen tool, click and drag, is let's say I wanted to move one of my Bezier curves. Let's say I didn't like it to be so curved right there. Or we'll do this one. The Option key, when I hold it down, turns my pen tool into what's called the, what is this one? I'm going to cheat and have to look it up. Anchor point tool. With the anchor point tool, notice it's just kind of a regular triangle, open triangle. I can click on a Bezier curve, or Bezier handle and then move exactly that point. Notice that it doesn't move the other one. Holding down Option gives me this particular style. Now I can continue drawing back with it. Click and drag, Option, and then click again. Pretty cool. Option key, spacebar key does the same thing. If I did draw off something and I wanted to change up the look of it later on, remember you can use your direct selection tool. However, with the direct selection tool, if I click on one Bezier handle, notice that it also changes up the angle and position of the other Bezier handle. However, if I used my anchor point tool, that only changes the one Bezier handle. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind whenever you have to change up your artwork. You can always go back to it and get it a little bit more precise, exactly where you want it to go. Let's go back to our pen tool. Click, click and drag. Final thing to note about the pen tool. Right now, if I click again, it'll give me my extra curve. What if I didn't want to have an extra curve? What if I want my next line to be straight down from there? I need to delete away this anchor point. Here's the quick way of doing it. If you click on this point again, it will erase away that anchor point. Now check out what I've got. It's just a straight line. And so I can do something like this. Click on it. Again, it deletes away that Bezier point. And I can give it a straight edge from that. If I didn't click on it, it's going to give me that curve, that Bezier handle, and it's going to curve my line. Did I lose anybody on that? Very, very simple. The book covers this, but that's demonstrating exactly how it looks. So the first thing I would do is we're going to draw off this boat kind of structure. Always start off with just one click. Click once as my starting point. Next, I'm going to curve it around to this one. So I'm going to click as my ending point. Notice that it curves and then it goes off at a different angle. So this would be a good stopping point. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm holding down my mouse until I move the line exactly where I want it to go. It lines up perfectly right here. If I move my mouse again to the ending point, now is that going to give me a line that looks good or no? No, it's off a little bit. I would really like to just get rid of this anchor point, this Bezier handle, so that I can control the next one. I'm going to click on it. Notice that it's gone. By the way, you can also hold down your spacebar. Little hand will let me drag over, so if you need a little more room. Click and drag. Now I get a full new line to draw with. That one's pretty close right there. Notice how far out I'm having to drag this. A lot of students, they think, oh, I can just pull it a little bit. No, sometimes you got to pull way out to get the curve that you want. If I was to click again, it's obviously going the wrong way. What if I accidentally clicked it? What can I hold down to control that anchor point? Option key. Hold down my Option key, and I can control that particular handle. And I can actually bring it in to right here. Hold down my spacebar, and this will let me drag over. You can use your little scroll wheel. The other thing I could do is I could sit in the middle part of my curve, so it draws the first half of my curve, and then I can go over, and that'll complete out the rest of my curve that way. And so I drew off that particular point. If it's off by a little bit, you can always use your direct selection tool and be able to place it exactly where you want it to go. I don't count off for small details like this. Question?
Can you add anchor points?
You can add. Very good. Okay, that's a great question. Let's say I'm drawing a box, close it off, and I need to add another anchor point to it. I've still got my pen tool. There is a special one that lets you add anchor points and delete away, but I'm going to use my regular pen tool. Watch what happens. If you click anywhere on a line, you see the little plus sign that's next to my there? It's going to add a point to that path. And I can do the same thing from here. Once it's added to a path, then you can use your direct selection tool and be able to move it around exactly where you want. With your pen tool, if you click on an already existing point, notice the minus sign next to it, it will delete away those points. So yes, you can add and remove existing points to an existing line. Works the same if you do curvature lines. If I click on a point on the curve, make sure it is selected, however, it will add points to that path as well. If I didn't have it selected, let's say I got my pen tool and I tried to click on this path, it's not actually adding to the path. What is it doing? It's just making a new document. You do have to have your objects selected in order to add points to that particular path. Pay attention to your cursor. If you see the little plus sign, you're on the right track to be able to do that. Good question. All right, I'm going to show you the super duper easy way. Illustrator did a great update a couple of years ago that makes drawing anchor points and curves a lot easier. By the way, let's swap this out. We'll fill that in. There we go. To draw off the sail, I'm going to do this using just 3 points, and I'm not going to make any initial curves. I've got my starting point here, so I drew a line, point here, and point here. So obviously I did a very bad job of drawing off that sail. Let's make it a little thicker so you can see it. Here's the new thing to do. I've still got my pen tool selected. If you hold down your Option key, once you've drawn off your shape, I've got my Convert Anchor Point, and you click on a line. Notice it changes now to this tool. This is my little shaper tool. I can click on a line and be able to drag it exactly where I want it to go. So I can take that straight edge and curve it to fit almost perfectly that particular line. Let's do the same thing for this bottom line. Hold down Option, click on it, drag to it. Option, click, and drag until it gets almost perfectly from there. If it is off by a little bit, remember, just go back, use your direct selection tool, and change up your Bezier handles to get it perfectly. So, to quickly draw off something, all I did was draw my line, hold down your Option key and click on the line again. That's what we're looking for to be able to add that particular curve. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, same thing for drawing these little lines on the inside. For these inside lines, one thing that people tend to miss is you need to draw these lines longer than is necessary, and you'll see why in just a second. So I'm going to click actually out here, not on the line, but out here. Here's my ending point. Hold down what key? Option key. Drag it into place. If I click again, I get this. Uh-oh. And it's actually adding on to the line. I'll Command Z. I'll undo that. To deselect a line, here's a keyboard shortcut you may want to write down because you're going to use it a lot. Shift Command Z. Or excuse me, Shift Command A. Shift Command A will deselect your line. Notice nothing is selected now. When I deselect it, I can start a new line and redraw. Shift Command A deselects it. Option. Your finger's going to have to learn how to dance across the keyboard. Shift Command A to deselect.
Does that work with any tool?
Works with any tool that you have. The way I remember it, Command A selects all. If I did just Command A, everything is selected. Shift Command A deselects all. So I can redraw from here. Notice now, I drew a little bit farther. If you don't draw far enough, I'll do one wrong. I'll stop it short right here. The next part ain't going to work. So notice that one's too close. To clean up this, we want to be able to fill in different colors, so it's actually going to look like this. And we also want to kind of do a little modifications to it. Here's the next tool that comes in handy. Turn on this one. I'm going to select all of my lines that I just created. The tool we're going to use is called the Shape Builder tool. This is different from the Shaper tool, which is up here. The Shape Builder tool is below it, and it looks like this. If you have it selected, especially if you have your artwork selected, notice when I hover over a piece, Illustrator is noticing it's looking for those filled in areas. It can actually see this as one particular object. From here, I can actually fill in and quickly create this shape as one vector object. I'm going to set my fill color, in this case to, let's do it as brown. My fill color is brown. When I click, it fills it in with brown. And so I can very quickly fill in and change colors to whatever I want. If it does something like this, now why is it selecting both of those? Because my line didn't go all the way across. So this is why I went farther than was necessary to fill it in. So you may have to move that in order to fill in, because that little bit of a gap was just enough to fill it in as one thing. The other thing you can do with the shape builder tool is erase away different areas. I'm going to zoom into this edge. I want to get rid of those extra little bits. You see the little plus sign that's on my cursor? By default, you're adding on to whatever you have. I added in this particular shape. The Option key gives me the minus sign, and I can actually click and drag over and erase away that particular line.
Do you have to hold down Option?
You do have to hold down Option. As long as I'm holding down Option, I get the minus sign. As soon as I let go, it goes back into addition mode. So Option cleans up all those pesky extra little lines, and it is a freeform line that you're drawing. It won't let you move or change up different shapes. But if I wanted to erase that away, hold on Option, and it's all gone. It treated that as one solid object. Once that's done, I've deselected. Hey, what did I do to deselect? What's the key? Shift Command A. Very good. Yay. I can use my direct selection tool. I can add a little bit of a bend to the end of these. I can actually click on that line, and it's already given me my Bezier curves, and I can make it bellow out this way. I love the shaper tool. As someone who has to make icons and logos, very often I'll start off by creating multiple different shapes that overlap one another. So I'll have something like this. Actually, let's turn it into a no fill. And so it's a complex shape, and I'd say I wanted to keep just this inside little flower. I can use my shape builder tool, set my fill color to be whatever I want it to be, and quickly fill in those areas. I can actually click and drag over, and it'll connect all of those together. And then to erase away the bits that I don't want, I can hold down Option and get rid of that. Now I've got a shape that made from multiple shapes that I wanted to keep. So the shape builder tool is a great, wonderful little tool to work with as well. And that's what you're going to use to do the billowing of the clouds. Let's do this second sail, and I'll show you the last thing that'll go for stage one. All I'm going to do is do my straight edges, hold down my Option key, and then drag it in to the point it should be, right on top of it. There we go. And I'm going to swap it up to quickly fill. The last thing you're going to do is to draw the masts behind the area. Traditionally, if you draw something, let's make this brown, it's going to be placed on top of whatever you draw. In this case, I drew it way too long. In the last exercise, we had, in order to bring something to the back or move it to the front, you either had to open up all of your layers and you had to find the right path and you had to drag it exactly where you wanted to go. Another thing you could do is you can go to your object and do your arrangement where you can send it forward and backwards. Let me show you a simpler way. I know I want this behind this area. So I'm going to use my rectangle tool. At the bottom of your toolbox are three little icons. And you can see these easily if you're in two-column mode. Right now, if you can't see them, it's in one drawing mode. We'll swap it back to two-column. Draw normal lets you draw things one on top of the other. So that's what I'm normally doing. The second one is to draw behind. And as the name would suggest, when I click and drag now, it'll draw my mast behind all of the objects that I have. And so it's actually stacking them in a reverse order. And I can do the same thing for the second mast. If I was to draw it, it's being placed behind all the objects. And you can see in my layers, those two rectangles were added at the bottom of that particular path. So that's a quick way of sending things directly to the back of it. The other drawing mode is called Draw Inside. We're not going to use it for this one, but every once in a while, let's say I wanted to mask out this one, or I wanted to put a logo inside of this shape. I can click on Draw Inside, and now when I choose a paintbrush or whatever, I can make something. Whoops, let's make this brown. There we go. I can actually draw things that are clipped inside of that one and give it little things. We won't do that for this particular project, but it's really fun and comes in handy for doing some more advanced kind of drawing stuff. Notice I get a little bounding box, but you will be using the draw behind in order to draw that that's behind that one as well. The final thing that we're going to do, and I'll cover this in the next class, is actually talk about making gradients and changing up the common colors for this one. This is the kind of project that I think you should be able to finish in probably 2 class periods. This class, you can draw off the sailboat. By next class, we'll be placing it inside of the poster and bringing everything together. Pretty cool? I know y'all can do it. I'll stop recording.